I wonder if there are any modern day monarchs, kings or queens, who write songs. Are there any kings today who, in addition to running their countries, are also prolific songwriters? Well, as you probably know, King David, the second king of Israel, back in the early days of the kings of the Old Testament, was a great songwriter. And some of his songs are still being sung in churches and synagogues today. In fact, at one point early on in his life, before he became king, his musical ability was so good that he was called to play for the king who preceded him to calm his spirit and bring him down off the ledge of his growing insanity. But as king, David wrote the most amazing song, Song 40. I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined to me and heard my cry. And he brought me up out of the pit of destruction, out of the miry clay, and he set my feet upon a rock, making my footsteps firm. And he put a new song in my mouth, a song of praise to our God, and many will see and fear and will trust in the Lord, he said. How blessed is the man who has made the Lord his trust, and has not turned to the proud, nor to those who lapse into falsehood. And the next lines of the song say this amazing thing. Many, O Lord our God, are the wonders which you have done, and your thoughts toward us, there is none to compare with you. And if I would declare and speak of them, they would be too numerous to count. Too numerous to count. It makes it kind of sound like David probably sat down to make a list of all that he was thankful to God for, and he ran out of paper and just decided to summarize. Yeah, if I were to make a list of all that God means to me and all that he's done for me and all the things that make him worthy of praise and all his attributes and all his wonders, and then to make a song out of it, that would be a pretty long song. So it was just easier for him to say, many, O Lord my God, are the wonders which you have done, and I would declare them. I would speak of them, but they would be too numerous to count. But what if we did begin now and make a list of all that we're thankful for? What if we just pulled out some paper and a pen and started writing down all the things that have filled our hearts with joy as we have received blessing after blessing from the Lord? What if, as the old song that churches used to sing in years past, what if we counted our many blessings and named them one by one? Remember that old song? Count your many blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God has done. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I've started to do that about 10 times in my life. I've started to make such a list of all the things I'm thankful to God for, and then for whatever reason I get distracted by life itself, and then the list gets lost, and then it fades into the woodwork somewhere. And sometimes when I'm cleaning out a closet or a room, even years later, I find an old list hiding in the clutter, sad and incomplete. And then I feel even more sad that it seems to take such daily and moment-by-moment discipline to stay focused on praise and thanksgiving. Remember what the Apostle Paul told us in Philippians: if there's anything worthy of praise, dwell on that, think about that, give God the glory for that. Finally, brethren, he said, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute or reputation, if there is any excellence, and if anything worthy of praise, dwell on these things. And a couple of verses earlier, he even hinted that if you can stay consistently thankful and fill your prayers with verbal thanksgiving, you can be spared from mental illness. Listen to it. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. A few years ago, I started repetitively using the phrase, the discipline of praise. And I don't really know if I made it up or I just heard it somewhere, but it seemed to describe the reality in my own life, being that I have to discipline myself to purposely turn my mind away from the things that are not worthy of praise and force myself to verbally out loud give thanks to the Lord for things that are worthy of praise. Because it's so easy for me to fall into a pattern of dwelling on things that are wrong in the world, wrong with our country, etc. And those are often the kind of things that float to the top of the list to think about each day. Our world just seems to be set up in such a way that it pushes us toward the worst possible parts of humanity and the worst possible reactions to things around us. You've heard of the tale of two cities. Well, the last couple of weeks, we've experienced the tale of two conventions. The first week, I found myself so angry at the lies I was hearing that I was screaming at the TV, and I turned it off, determined not to listen to any more conventions. But the next week, I broke down and I started watching a little bit of the next political convention, and I found myself so inspired as I watched practically every speech and all the Christian testimonies that were woven into the mix. But it's not like God fell off his throne in heaven the first week and then got back up and dusted himself off the second week. God is the same as he always is, yesterday, today, and forever. He didn't go to sleep one week and wake up the next. And whatever he was worthy of praise of in the second week, he was also worthy of praise in the first week. So I ask, why do we allow our mood to be manipulated by the politics of our day or by the politics of hatred? Why is it so hard for us each day to sing and make a melody in our hearts to the Lord, as we've been commanded to do in Ephesians 5:19, where Paul said, speak to one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making a melody in your heart to the Lord. You might be interested to know that my oldest sister's name is Melody. And her name is only used 3 times in the Bible, and one of the other times is that it was used by Isaiah prophesying of the restoration of Jerusalem after all of its failure and after that long period of darkness. He said, indeed, the Lord will comfort Zion. He will comfort all her waste places, and her wilderness he will make like Eden, and her desert like the garden of the Lord. Joy and gladness will be found in her, thanksgiving and the sound of a melody. Let me ask, why is praise so hard to come by? Why does the verbal giving of thanks often have to wait until the 4th Thursday in November? We have a tradition at our Thanksgiving table that we go all the way around the table, and everyone, even Isaiah, who is only 3 years old, has to say out loud something that they're thankful for. And sometimes the food is just getting colder and colder as people are trying to think of something to give thanks for. And I wonder sometimes, why should that be so hard? When I ask you to do something in a minute, some of us, even as Christians, are going to have a hard time coming up with even a list of 10 things that we want to be unashamedly thankful for, much less 10,000 things. And if we come up with such a list of things to be thankful for, if we are honest, we probably haven't actually verbalized our thanks for those things directly to God. For example, you might be thankful for the way that freshly mowed grass smells, or the way it feels under your bare feet. But have you thanked God for such small daily pleasures? You might be thankful for your spouse, but have you thanked God for him or her? You might very well be thankful to live in a state like New York, if you live here, that has almost no exposure with natural disasters, hurricanes and tornadoes and earthquakes. But have you thanked God that you were born here or came here by providence, or are you just griping about the winters and looking forward to the day when you can move to Florida? You see, sometimes I think we are thankful for the small things, but I also think that we don't often pause to voice our thanks out loud, not even in prayer. Sometimes we sing a song called I Owe Everything to You. It's a praise song giving credit to God for all the things that he's done and made. The highest mountains, the deepest oceans, clouds that cover the sky, the widest canyons, the furthest horizons, you created the sun and light. The quark and neutron, the praying mantis, dewdrops on morning grass, the color purple, and every little detail down to the last. I owe everything to you, and I raise my voice to honor you. But do we do that? Do we raise our voices to honor him? Is the praise of our God about to jump off our lips at any moment? I have this theory that the more we discipline ourselves to speak his praise out loud, the more natural it becomes, and the less we dwell on things that are not worthy of praise. Yes, there are things in this world that are dark and depressing. There are things that should never happen. And when they do happen, they're often not dealt with in ways that actually help. and that usually makes them far worse. For example, wars and retaliation from wars, school shootings, and the mental illness that's almost always the root cause for such mayhem is almost never dealt with in ways that do anything but push us down the road until the next one occurs. Human trafficking and the lifetime of human sorrow it creates for the victims. Abortion, the slicing up of the innocent for what purpose? Because they're a social inconvenience. Police being shot, police feeling compelled to shoot others. In almost none of these cases is there a proper and measured response that leads our country to less of those things or to a better place. So when a politician can honestly say, promises made, promises kept, I'm happy. Because usually it's promises made and nothing kept, or it's the wrong kind of promises made in the first place. Because they don't start out with the wisdom of God or the truth of God, so they don't even have a sane starting point to fix problems that only exist because of the sins of men. Anyway, do you see how easy it is for me to start ranting about such things? But the truth is that for the most part, my heart is filled with praise. I'm constantly thinking of the things I'm thankful for. For example, because my vehicles are old enough, 13 years old and older, that you might think that they might not start at any given day when I need them most, I've gotten into the habit of giving thanks to God out loud in my car when I'm about 50 feet down the road, that He has given me reliable transportation, and I never bemoan the fact that almost everyone I know has a nicer, newer car than mine. I'm just grateful to have the independence of car ownership in the first place, and I feel constantly grateful for that. For my wife and kids, and for the various ministries in our church that just seem to keep going no matter what. But here's the problem. I don't consistently voice my thanks to those people. I probably voice my gratitude to God for them way more than I do to them. But my point is that Thanksgiving is something that we need to become more comfortable with, more expressive of. I used to say that love not expressed is love that's not felt. But the same is true of gratitude. You may very well be thankful for your spouse, but do you express it? You may be thankful for your job, but do you express it to God and to your boss? It's easy enough to be angry that your job doesn't pay you what you think you're worth. And if I'm honest, I'm glad that somebody had the idea to raise the minimum wage, but I wonder how many people got the increase in pay and gave thanks, or did they just say, yeah, it's about time? Here's what I think. I think we have so many reasons to give thanks that if we were to start making a list, we may not be able to stop. And somewhere in the middle of the list, we may start weeping at the thought of all that God has done for us and given to us. For example, pretty much every morning since March 15th, I have prayed, and I know others have too, that God would protect our church family from COVID. And so far, it's like we live on this island called NSCC, and God has answered those prayers. And I don't take it for granted that I can rest easy and stop praying for protection from the virus. I just keep praying for one more day of His supernatural protection, and I feel an immense sense of gratitude to God for placing such a watertight seal around us. You know, one of the reasons I angrily shut off the convention coverage the first week is because one of the candidates mocked those who are hoping for a miracle in this COVID thing. He said, no miracle is coming. What a faithless statement, to imagine that there is no God who is capable of saving us if we just humbly ask Him. And that's exactly what I believe. I believe God has granted to us and to those that we love a miracle. Is it because we deserve it more than others? No, absolutely not. I think it's simply because we asked and then we trusted Him for the answer. And I pointed this out before, but it's one of those Thanksgiving passages that's just so in our faces in so many ways. But Romans chapter 1 points out a plunging digression into the abyss of God's wrath when it describes world culture like this. Professing to be wise, they became fools And they exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God for an image in the form of corruptible man, and of birds and four-footed animals and crawling creatures. Therefore God gave them over in the lust of their hearts to impurity, so that their bodies would be dishonored among them, for they exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this reason, God gave them over to degrading passions, for their women exchanged the natural function for that which is unnatural, and in the same way also the men abandoned the natural function of the woman and burned in their desire toward one another, men with men, committing indecent acts and receiving in their own persons the due penalty of their error. And just as they did not see fit to acknowledge God any longer, God gave them over to a depraved mind to do those things which are not proper, being filled with all unrighteousness and wickedness and greed and evil, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, arrogant, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, without understanding, untrustworthy, unloving, unmerciful. And although they know the ordinance of God, that those who practice these things are worthy of death, they not only do the same, but also give hearty approval to those who practice them. It's describing a culture that has become totally atheistic, turning its back on faith in God and embracing every kind of sin and even promoting it. But where did this slide into atheism start? Let me read the verse right before that passage. In verse 21, it says, "For even though they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks. They became futile in their speculations, and their foolish heart was darkened. They knew God, but they did not give thanks to God. God manifested himself to them, and they did not acknowledge him. God had revealed his glory to them, and they didn't honor him. God had made himself known to them in unmistakable and undeniable truth, and they refused to believe. Their Thanksgiving tables were all about football and beer. Their dinner tables were just about food and drink. Their mouths were not poised and ready to give verbal thanks. They just sat down and started eating without even a pause to give thanks. How dangerous is it that we don't give thanks? Let's do this for the next week. Let's take a small notebook and write down everything that we can think of to be thankful for. The color green. A roof that doesn't leak. A dog that's housebroken, a spouse that's kept his or her vows, a paycheck, a car that gets more than 9 miles to the gallon, a health insurance plan, our country, our president, our Congress, the freedoms that we have, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution that abolished slavery and involuntary servitude, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that ended discrimination based on race, which, by the way, was achieved through peaceful demonstrations and powerful words, led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the only preacher who's had a federal holiday named after him. We could be thankful for these things. What could we be thankful for? Running water in each of our homes. Flip a switch and you have heat in the winter and cool in the summer. Flip another switch and you have heat or fire to cook with without having to chop wood. If your car broke down, you still wouldn't starve because there are stores you could walk to in practically every direction. Birthday presents, money to buy birthday presents for others, hand sanitizers everywhere you look, masks if you choose to use them. Yes, you have to pay taxes, but sometimes you also get money back when you need it the most. What about being thankful for your eyesight? My daughter Crystal has unexpectedly and hopefully temporarily lost hers, and I feel like she's probably much more grateful for the part she still has left. I'm thankful for the beauty in the world around me. I'm thankful for the color in flowers and the natural instincts in animals and for the wonders of outer space, but even more thankful for the wonders of inner space and the minutiae of detail and function of the human body and DNA. I'm thankful that science is leading us to more and more wonder at the imagination and power of the Almighty God. I'm thankful for the Bible and the cross and the history and the truth and the archaeology that lead us to more and more trust in the veracity of the Holy Scriptures. I'm even thankful for things that I hear about that sound silly and they make me laugh, and I'm not really sure if I'm laughing in amazement or laughing in the nonsense of it. But I watched a program the other day that highlighted the science of facial recognition that researchers in England are trying out on pigs to trace their personalities and the moods of the pigs so that they can make your bacon taste better because it comes from happier hogs. There really is no end to the wonder and amazement of our God. And I agree with King David. If I would declare and speak of all of them, they would be too numerous to count. But let's try, okay? You know, I made up these little booklets called 10,000 Reasons. And when I was making them up, somebody asked me what I was doing the other day, and I told them that I was writing a book with no words. But hopefully it will have a lot of words by the end of the week. And you can do this however you want, but I want us to use every day of this entire week to write down all that we're thankful for. And as we do, let's lift up our voices in praise and thanksgiving to God, our Father, and to the Lord Jesus Christ for their constant love and abiding care for us. And I know that we may not be able to come up with 10,000 items, but we can surely come up with enough to fill 600 blank lines in a small notebook. I don't know all the ways that this exercise might change our lives, but I feel sure that if you're looking for a way to relieve your stress, voicing your thanks out loud is at least 90% of the cure. If you're angry and bitter, giving thanks will at the very least give you a different perspective. If you're scared about the world around you, just pause and give thanks for your trials and for the trials that others bring on you. Is praise a magic pill that makes all your troubles disappear? Is voicing our thanks some kind of supernatural mantra that we can just chant and it makes the boogeyman run away from us? I'm not sure exactly what to call it, a super pill or a magic mantra, but I feel confident that our enemy Satan has less access into our hearts and minds when we are counting our blessings. The wider truth is that you can also count your non-blessings. You can count the money that you're not making, or you can be thankful for the money that you're blessed to make. You can gripe about your taxes, or you can just be thankful that you have a paycheck from which to pay taxes, with some left over to buy an ice cream cone once in a while. It's not really that hard to find things to gripe about, but it's also not hard to find things to be thankful about, and I guess we all have a choice to make as to which one we spend more time voicing, our gripes or our praises. But I felt driven to preach this sermon on praise because we're living in such a negative time. And not only is this an election year when candidates are slinging lots of mud at each other, it's also developing into a very violent time where people are slinging bricks at each other. And there seems to be a tug of war between those who want to be thankful for America and those who want to tear it down. And the voices of one of those sides are being silenced every day by Facebook and other social media censors. But if we Christians can be heard by anyone, let ours be the voices of praise and thanksgiving. We live in a time that has made people live in fear more than ever that I ever imagined. I don't live in fear at all. But I know that there are a lot of people who have locked themselves into their homes and almost refuse to come out for any reason. And I don't necessarily think that a prayer or a song of thanksgiving can cure all the ills of the world or solve all the problems or turn a violent man into a peaceful protester. But I do wonder how every event would be reshaped if those in charge voiced honest thanks to God before they made decisions to do anything. How would a husband's anger at his wife change if before he started formulating his next hateful tirade, he uttered a prayer of thanksgiving for her? How much business would divorce courts be robbed of if husbands and wives started each day or ended each day with prayers of thanksgiving for each other? Even our perspective on whether America is a good place to live or a terrible place to live could be changed, I think, by a long list in our country of what we are thankful for. If you started to make a list of grievances against America and a list of good things about this country, my guess is that even the hardest-hearted person would have a much longer list of the good than the bad. Because as King David said, the number of things on the good list of God's blessings is uncountable. 10,000 reasons? Probably more. I dare you to fill up a notebook by next Sunday, and I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful that you took time to listen to this, but I'll be more thankful if you take these words to heart and start living a life of verbal praise and thanksgiving. And I love you.